Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are the Rochester Press Box. Bill Pucko here. Tariq Spence, WDKX. How you doing, man?
Feeling good. Feeling better every week.
Like the suit coat.
Yeah,
And Pat Duffy.
I picked it up for you.
Thank you. And Pat Duffy wearing a Sabres jersey. Apropos, whose is it?
Yeah. Well, it's Jack Eichel's 100th anniversary jersey for a gamer from a couple of years ago. But yeah, man, this is a sad, sad day as we miss the playoffs for the 9th consecutive season when
officially
almost everybody gets in. The Sabres were a game away. The game they were supposed to play the night the season got canceled. If they would have won it, they would have been in the 24, and the game was postponed. I mean, not that there's an excuse, but dear God, man. Dear God.
Way to make it worse. You know, ordinarily I would go to Tariq, but since I want to talk hockey first, Pat, I'll let you do the honors. What do you think about the NHL's plan to restart?
I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're talking about being able to do it completely safely, the idea they came up with is interesting, right? You're giving the teams that wouldn't have normally made it the opportunity to get in by having to win a round. The weird thing is they're going to have the teams that are already in play each other while these other teams are playing in to the playoffs. So you're going to have these lame duck almost preseason games. And in my head, I think immediately like risk for injury, right? If I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Boston Bruins, like I don't want to go out there and skate on this, but I don't know, man. I saw a thing the other day. Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the league, said they could be running through 25 to 30,000 COVID tests. And that's a little bit of an issue for me. I would love to watch hockey, but if you have to use that many tests that could be available to other people, maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah, the numbers are even greater with the whole baseball proposals. Let's stay on hockey for a second. The two things that I liked, to your point about the better teams playing the better teams, I thought it was brilliant because it eliminated the question of while everyone else is playing, these four teams are sitting there getting stale. So everybody was playing. And the one thing I thought they got right is that they came out with a plan and said, this is what we're going to do. The NBA is flopping around like a fish on, dry land. And, everybody else has an issue. But Bettman, and like him or not, no one does, came out with a plan and said, this is what we're going to do.
I have no problem with it. I think Bettman made a stand and said, hey, let's just go to playoffs. Let's do this and get the season over with. One thing I will say about the NBA is that I would have liked to have, and we'll get to the Lillard comments a little bit later on, I would have liked to have seen some games played to Duffy's point. You know what? What if the Sabres would have played maybe 2 more weeks before you start going into the playoffs? And maybe they would have had a chance to make it into the playoffs and then get sort of the engine rolling. You don't just take your car right out of the garage and start racing it. You need to, warm up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the NBA should go at least 2 weeks, get some games going, maybe get to that 16 seed, and then start playing from there.
So the idea, again, Tariq, with the NBA, there's various plans out there. Mm-hmm. So you want to see regular season games prior to the playoffs and not just jump in.
No, don't. I don't want to jump in. I'd rather the players get warmed up for about 2 weeks, maybe settle on the top teams, top 16 teams, and then go to that format into that tournament and play it all the way through for a championship. It's a different season. It's a chance to explore new things, which I'll get to in Unfinished Business a little bit later on. I don't really just like jumping into the playoffs because you have no chemistry. You don't know what you're going to expect going straight into a playoff series. And you know what? You may get a champion that people won't validate later on.
Yeah, and Pat, we'd be remiss, I guess, if we didn't bring up football. To some extent, they're simply saying, it's business as usual here. We'll tackle these issues as they come.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, right? Like, you're not really hearing anything about any potential differences. Like, even the potential difference, like, give me an idea of what this could look like. You cannot look me in the face and tell me this season won't be affected by what's going on, that there's going to be 72,000 people on opening day at New Era Field. It's just not going to happen. Heck, how about here in Rochester? Bill's training camp, right? Like, they're proceeding as if training camp is going to happen right now. How, in a month and a half from now, are you going to have 10,000 people sitting in stands watching the Bills practice?
How about college football? They've got 100 days before they're supposed to play their first game yet. They had to delay their schedule. And different states have different rules of when players can go back. You got the Big Ten that doesn't want to do this until they get the governor's okay. The SEC is going back sometime in June. So it's all over the place. Nobody knows who's going to play.
Yeah, and then the last thing to wrap this up, I think what the NBA and the NHL have going for them is that they're completing their seasons. They get this thing in during the summer when there's less of a chance of reinfection. They wash their hands of this thing. no pun intended. Football and baseball are going to head back into the cooler weather, where every medical expert says that this thing is going to rear its head again, and football and baseball are going to have issues at the end of their season, which is really where they don't want them. We are the Rochester Press Box, and we're going to talk Buffalo Bills next.
Original Bay Goodman Pizza, located on the corner of North Winton at Browncroft. There are 3 ways to get the original Bay and Goodman delivery. Go to baygoodman.com.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. Rochester Press Box, Bill Pucko, Tariq Spence, Pat Duffy. Tariq, Ed Oliver got himself in a little bit of an issue, a DUI, a gun charge. These days, do we care anymore?
We care if it's going to affect the regular season. And, one of the things that's going to happen is the NFL is going to go to the standard protocol, let the law do what it's supposed to do. I'm sure Ed Oliver is going to be at camp. I'm sure Ed Oliver is going to participate all the way up till the legal process is taken care of. I think they're probably going to, he's probably going to get a slap on the wrist. I don't think he's going to do some serious jail time or anything like that. Maybe a huge fine. They'll suspend him for 4 games. He'll have to fight that and go down to 2 games. So that's the first 2 games of the season for Ed Oliver to be out. Do we care, I guess, about how many games he's out, right, Duffy? I guess that would be the end of it, as long as it's not a problem, which I don't think it'll be for Ed Oliver in the future. It's not like he's got an ongoing issue.
Oh, I disagree with that. I think that we care more about what happens off the field with our players than we ever have ever. Like, it's easy to forget. Nate Newton, while playing for the Dallas Cowboys, I believe it was Nate Newton, was pulled over with a van full of marijuana. Like a van full of marijuana, and nobody really talked about it. Like, it was like a joke in the USA Today for 2 weeks, and that was the end of it, man. Like, the things that these guys, these athletes in all 4 sports used to get away with was jaw-dropping, because the argument was always like, well, they can play ball, who cares, everything's fine. The way that these 4 leagues now sell their athletes, right? It's not good enough that they throw the ball or they catch the ball or they tackle somebody. You need to personally invest in them for them to make more money off of these players. You have to care. And when you do care about that player as a human being, yes, it bothers you when they have a DWI, when they're accused of some kind of drug offense, when something goes on in their personal life. I think now it's a way bigger deal than it ever was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I may be going back farther than it matters, but I remember Paul Hornung, who was as an analyst after he's a Heisman Trophy winner of the 60s, but he was an analyst of Notre Dame football, and he went public with the point. He says, you know what, our players don't get into enough trouble, meaning like, they don't have an edge enough to make Notre Dame as a football power, unlike the University of Miami or some of these other teams, especially in the Southeast, that were really tough. He says, we need more guys who are going to get arrested. Tariq?
I don't think you need to be arrested, but you need to have an edge. And I think that's what, listen, we're dealing with football players. These guys go out there, put their bodies on the line, ultimate sacrifice. They go out there and do that every single week and prepare for it year round. So some of these guys aren't going to make great decisions, and some of them haven't. For the most part, though, a lot of players stay out of trouble. They don't get into situations like that. And when they do, they're human beings. I don't understand what I am not trying to minimize DUI or DWI or a weapons charge. I will just tell you this. We've had plenty of athletes do worse and get less.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair statement, but I don't know, man. Like, you're in a position of entitlement. Like, let's use Sammy Watkins as an example. A couple weeks ago, he puts out an article where he's just saying all kinds of crazy things that he believes in, right? Like, he's a flat earther, and he believes in, like, feelings that go throughout people's bodies. He has a quote that NFL games are played the night before in players' dreams. That wasn't, like, an analogy. He legitimately believed that. And it occurred to me as I'm reading this article, the reason why he feels the need to say these things out loud is he was such a good football player growing up his entire life. Nobody had the stones to go up to him and go, hey, you know what you're saying is insane, right? Like, these guys are raised in an entitled situation where they get away with things and are allowed to do things no one else does. And when it catches up to them, in a professional sense, it makes it 1,000 times worse.
I do not go to my athletes and wonder about whether they think the earth is flat or round. I go to my athletes because I admire what they do on the field. They do great things off the field. I love them even more. But do I voice my political opinion based on whether or not an athlete supports this or supports that? No, I can't agree with all athletes. That's why we have different opinions.
Sure, totally fair statement. And look, I use the Sammy Watkins thing as just an example of, like, how does nobody tell you you're crazy? But, like, my daughter loves hockey, right? So when something happens to one of her favorite players, and Tariq, your kids watching the sports that you watch with your kids, right? Like, how am I supposed to explain? And I hate to be that guy, what about my kids? But I think I'm allowed to give pause when I have to explain to my child why this player did this. Why are they not the good person that we thought they were? Am I going to be allowed to do this? Things along that line. I know it's an oversimplification, but yeah, I think it matters.
Yeah, it goes back to the old Charles Barkley about saying, I don't want to be a role model. I don't feel responsible enough. These guys are who they are. I mean, they are who they are, right, Tariq?
Yeah, I just believe in a sense that, they're still human beings. As talented as they are, they're flawed, just like everybody else. I don't understand why we put them on such a high pedestal and say they're a great athlete, so they must be a great person. Not necessarily.
Probably not. We are the Rochester Press Box, like it or not, is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box. Pat Duffy. Like it or not, Vegas's odds on Bill Belichick winning Coach of the Year in the NFL are the lowest on the board.
It does amaze me, the respect that Belichick gets. Now, take the Super Bowls. I mean, I understand you win all the Super Bowls, but Bill Belichick was nothing before Tom Brady. Tom Brady was nothing really before Bill Belichick, right? It is expected that the Patriots are going to go out this season and they're going to blow the doors off the world because this man is a coaching genius who was able to do what he did with a roster full of players that were willing to take much less money to play with a quarterback like Tom Brady, along with a quarterback who was willing to take less money to continue winning championships with these other guys. It's not surprising, but when are we going to wake up and realize that sometimes people just need each other to succeed? I'm convinced that Belichick needed Brady to succeed, because if he was this genius coach that everyone claims that he is, that we've been watching for years and years, he'd have succeeded in Cleveland. Hell, he'd have succeeded before Bledsoe got his spleen exploded in a Jets game and they were forced to put in this quarterback who led to all this success. I mean, Bill, you're a New England guy. You cannot tell me you believe that Bill Belichick has the ability to win legitimate games with the roster he has this year.
No, and this is clearly also, Tariq, I think, it's bad news for Buffalo, because Vegas generally knows what it's doing, and if they think Belichick can make something out of what New England's got, this is going to come at Buffalo's expense.
Well, not necessarily. Sean McDermott is 18-1 odds. Belichick 12-1. You know who else is 12-1? Bruce Arians, who now Tom Brady his brand new coaches. So I mean, it's very interesting to me where this all sets, and who got 50-1 odds for coaching. You're gonna love this, Duffy. Adam Gase of the Jets.
Okay, Vegas knows what they're talking about. Bill, get out of here with your Vegas nose takes.
Also 50-1, Doug Marrone.
He shouldn't even have a job. He should not have a job right now. He should not have a gig. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with this discussion.
And the last 50-1, Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien. Well, is that for Coach of the Year or General Manager of the Year?
Coach, I don't know.
Duffy, I know you want to end this discussion, Pat, but you have to have one of these two guys. You want Marrone or Gase?
Oh, I want Gase. I hate Doug Marrone with like the passion of like 1,000 burning suns. That guy, and for personal reasons, something that happened between us. But I'll tell you a story some other time when we got more time.
All right, Tariq, like it or not, the Champions for Charity golf tournament was wound up with huge cable ratings numbers.
5.8 million viewers. It was also on a number of different channels, which I didn't realize. I only watched one at a time. TNT, TBS, True TV. Listen, this couldn't fail because, one, it was live sports. Two, it was Tiger Woods and it was Phil Mickelson. And three, it was Brady and Manning. It was fun to listen to, even in the rain, even with the golf carts. They should steal most of that stuff and do it more often. I had a lot of fun watching it just for the trash talk. And no, I did not enjoy Tom Brady splitting his pants nor the joke of social distancing after it.
Brady manages to get himself into pretty much everything, doesn't he?
No,
At least on that show.
He gets in everything except for an entertaining personality, right there, Bill?
Yeah, highest selling football jersey in New England, right? You point that out every week.
Yeah, just kind of saying. That's all I'm saying.
We have the Rochester Press Box. Unfinished Business is next.
Came now to Eichel. He floated one.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. It's time for Unfinished Business, and as always, we go to Pat Duffy first.
Sports venues are looking for any kinds of streams of revenue right now to make money, and two stadiums are doing very similar things. The Hard Rock Stadium, where the Dolphins play down in Miami, opened up for a drive-in movie theater, or will be opening up for a drive-in movie theater. The same thing is going to happen in the parking lot at Yankee Stadium, and it's a pretty cool idea, but it's places that don't really need money. They're major league venues. However, across this country, especially right here in Rochester, there are minor league franchises that need some kind of money coming in to be able to potentially survive what we're doing here. How great of an idea would it be for the folks at Frontier Field to put up a big screen in the parking lot, show me a classic sports movie once a week until the end of summer, turn on the fryers, give me the fantastic food you got. I want a waffle cone with mashed potatoes, add chicken, add honey mustard, and cheese on top, and let me sit in my car and watch something happen. I want to support these sports franchises that desperately rely on ticket revenue. I need a way to do it. And I think the smartest way that it can be done, and folks with the Red Wings, if you're listening, open up that parking lot, put up a screen, and let me watch The Natural on a nice summer night in late June.
Damian Lillard made a comment basically saying that if the NBA does return and start all over again and his Portland Trail Blazers are not in it, he's not going to play in the games. And he has a really good point. Why not just play 2 weeks of basketball, have your top teams already make the playoffs, and have your bottom teams fight to get into the playoffs, then have your 16-team tournament? Damian Lillard makes a very good point in the sense that why would I play these games if we don't have a chance to win a championship title? So give him a chance to win an NBA title. You have a great opportunity, NBA and NHL, to basically explore any which way possible and set your brand new start of your seasons at the end of the year, right around Christmas Day, NBA, Christmas Day, NHL, Christmas Day, and stay away from football. A great opportunity. Lillard deserves to play for a championship. If you're going to have everybody back, you might as well give him a chance as well.
When we last saw the Buffalo Sabres, it was March 9th, and they were losing in overtime to the Washington Capitals. That game snapped a 6-game losing streak. The Sabres were comfortably out of the playoff race. They were losing. They weren't playing well. And Buffalo Sabres fans, while they were disappointed, it was certainly like a comfort zone for them. We're used to being there. And then on March 12th, the NHL shut down. The plan now is to reopen and include not 8, but 12 teams in each conference's playoff draw. And all of a sudden, the Buffalo Sabres are the first team out. And it's really close. As Pat had said earlier, the Sabres have 1 fewer win, 1 more loss, and they have 3 more wins in regulation, having played 2 fewer games than the Montreal Canadiens, the team they're chasing in the standings, and the team that they're going to lose to in this. If it makes us any worse for the local hockey fan, it's that the Rochester Americans were enjoying one of the finest seasons in recent history, and the AHL had to cancel. This is really unfortunate, but more than anything, it is so typical. That's Unfinished Business. That's our show. Isn't it, Pat? Isn't it just awful?
Do you say all that?
I don't know how the math works that you wound up winning 3 more games in regulation and played 2 fewer and still lost to these guys.
Points percentage and loser point in overtime. I hate the loser point. I hate shootouts. I will hate it forever. And did you bring that up just because I made fun of Belichick and Brady in one show together? Because that was a mean thing you did, if that's why you did that.
It might have played a role.
Don't you wish you had 2 weeks to try to win those games back and get in the playoffs now? I'm telling you.
Well, look, it sounds good, but I know that the Sabres would have somehow gotten even closer and then managed to not get in. So
and
it's probably this way.
It's still 13th. You can't cry too much about that. Tariq, nice job. Thank you very much, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Pat Duffy, have a good week. Thank you all for joining us. See you next week with the Rochester Press Box.